Hello. I decided to do my speech on the crisis cycle. Some of you might already be familiar with it, especially if you work in the mental health field, which is where I first learned about it. Did you know that 1 in 17 Americans are living with a mental illness? I found this to be pretty eye-opening when I was attending my trainings. I've had to do quite a few different trainings for work, but I feel that out of all of them, this is the one that I've been able to apply not only in work, but also to my everyday life. There are 5 phases to the crisis cycle. The baseline phase, which is just your everyday in a good mood. Normal, I guess you could call it, which is different for everybody, but the next phase is the escalation phase, which is when somebody has started to escalate towards a crisis. They're a little bit higher than the baseline phase. They're worried, they have anxiety. Then there's the crisis phase, which is different for everybody. Somebody's crisis might be that they've lost their keys, and somebody might have a crisis over an animal passing away, or you just never know. A crisis is different for each person. Then there's the de-escalation phase, which is when a person has started to calm down and is heading back towards the baseline phase. And then there's the post-crisis phase, which is when a person is able to be able to look back and think about what happened and why it happened and be able to talk about it and start to feel better. The most important thing to remember when you are helping someone who's dealing with a crisis is that one answer does not fit all. Something that made me feel better is not guaranteed to make you feel better, and just because it made you feel better doesn't mean it's going to work on somebody else. I think that's the hardest thing to remember, but it's probably the most important thing. One thing that's really stuck with me through the training and what I learned is that most crises can be avoided just by being aware of your own nonverbal cues. For instance, if you're standing there and somebody is entering a crisis, you're standing there with your arms closed, or your hands are in your pocket, or you're not making eye contact, it could be giving the wrong cues to that person, and they may not feel like you're there to help them. They might even think that you are there to hurt them. Their first 3 steps in helping somebody who's dealing with a crisis are assess, adapt, and attend. You always assess the situation. You want to determine the level of risk, not only for that person, but also for yourself, because if there's something in the room that might hurt you or hurt them, you don't want to try to help because it could turn out really badly. Adapt to the situation. Like if the person has entered a crisis, they could escalate really quickly. You always just want to be aware of your surroundings. You want to decide what your plan of action is going to be, and after you've decided is when you attend to your plan. What you've decided you need to put into place. One thing that I think is hard to remember is someone who's in a crisis is not there to hurt you, which can be hard to remember when you're feeling intimidated by somebody because of their actions, but really all somebody wants is to know that there are people out there that want to help them and that actually care. I think being able to listen non-judgmentally is really important. Being able to be aware of your facial expressions, make sure you're not raising your voice, make sure you're offering support is the most important thing to do for somebody who's in a crisis. If you are ever helping someone in a crisis and you feel like you've lost control of the situation, they are going to be able to sense that, but it's okay to call for help. That's another reason it's so important to always be assessing the situation and being aware of your surroundings. If you don't ever feel confident in helping somebody who's in a crisis, you can always call the crisis center or you can call 911, but I think it's just most important to remember that everybody just wants to know that people care about them. And if you can help someone from going into a crisis just by showing them that you care, I think that's a pretty good thing.